The start of life should be easy for babies. It's pretty simple. It's eating, sleeping, and pooping. But what about a little bit later? What about motor development? Things like tummy time, like getting on their bellies or holding their head up. Should they be nice and stiff and tense right away, or should they be a floppy, loose baby? Other questions parents have of Bumbo seats, jumpers, are those helpful? When can we do them? My kid loves it. Is there a downside to that? I've got so much information to share with you because I've heard so many misconceptions from parents on these topics. You've heard somebody maybe say to your own baby, or you've said it about a friend that, oh, your baby is so strong, they're holding their head right up at birth. That's a sign that they're stressed, not strong. Or you see the Bumbos, you see the jumpers, things that help hold the baby up in the seated position, or maybe they're in a seat and they're able to bounce and they're able to play, and you're thinking you're helping them learn to walk. Those devices tend to be holding a kid back and creating more harm than good. So before you do anything to help your baby with motor development, please pause, please watch this video, because I want to dispel some of those myths, clear up some of the misconceptions, and making sure that you have the information you need to give your kid the best chance at good motor development, which really is the foundation of every other milestone for that kid. So let's talk about that holding the head up right away. That is a huge red flag, and is something that I think there is a massive misunderstanding around. I've heard so many parents mention, my nurses or my OB said, your kid is so strong, they're holding their head up right away after birth, right? Maybe they're on your chest and they're lifting their head up and they're looking at you, or you're realizing that they're able to tense their whole body and pick their head up off the ground in just those first couple of days or weeks of life. Yes, it's tempting to think our kids are an overachiever and they're the next superstar. In reality, that's not a good thing. A newborn is supposed to be mushy and gushy and squishy and soggy, right? Pick any one of those weird words that you like to describe them. They're supposed to be relaxed. They're supposed to be at ease. If your kid is holding their head up right away, you'll stop and think back about it. It's not really that they had good head control. What was probably happening is their whole body was tensing, right? They weren't just lifting their head up, they were arching their back, they were stiffening throughout their whole body, they were straightening their limbs, and that's not what we want for kids. That is not a sign of a healthy, well-developing nervous system. That's a sign of a kid in stress. Usually it goes hand in hand with some different birth indicators, right? Typically either some sort of birth or pregnancy stress. Maybe there's an in utero positioning thing that was weird. Maybe mom had some extra emotional or physical stress during pregnancy, or that birth process itself involves some sort of forceps, vacuum, C-section extraction, or induction, prolonged labor, anything that's going to add a lot of extra pressure to that experience, that tends to create that stress response in a kid and that physical tension throughout their whole system. It also goes hand in hand with other struggles, right? We see the kids that are holding their head up right away, very frequently they're maybe struggling to latch, they're struggling to sleep, they're a little more fussy, they're dealing with tummy time concerns, in a little bit down the road. There's a lot of red flags that all go together because that is not a normal experience. So what should we be doing? That's what we want to see as a red flag. But tummy time, guys, that is so foundational for everything else. But I want to help you think about this differently, right? Because let's say you do have a fresh newborn, you don't really think about just plopping them right on the ground and then letting them try to squirm and figure life out. What I want you to reframe tummy time as is just not on the back time, right? That can look like a lot of different things. That means maybe you're holding them. Maybe you have this kind of football hold while they're, on their belly on your arm. Maybe you're lounging back on the couch and they're resting on your chest. You're baby wearing. You got a million different options, but what I want you to do is not have them just flat on their back as much as possible, right? That is for a couple reasons. One, that is the foundational piece of every other neurodevelopment, right? The motor system is going to keep developing if they have more time on their tummy, because that's developing the diaphragm, right? Your diaphragm is working against the floor or whatever they're pressing against. That's also going to allow them to figure out head motion and head control on an appropriate time frame. They're able to figure out turning and engaging. Then they learn to push up, which is then going to lead to rolling and crawling and rocking, and all those other huge developmental milestones are only going to happen if they get enough tummy time, aka not on the back time. So rather than thinking of a certain time frame or a certain, 60 minutes a day that we want to hit, I think of it in a different perspective. I think the default should be on the belly or not on the back. And you want to lead into that as much as possible. Yes, don't just leave your kid there crying and fussing if they're really not tolerating it well. We want to help work up to as much as possible, but that is the standard. Let's get them off their back as much as possible. That's also going to avoid developing a flat head, right? If they're always laying on their back, especially if they have some sort of head turning resistance, right? So many of the kids that we work with that are dealing with these challenges, they have a preference in head rotation. They're only looking in one direction, or they are looking more in one direction than the other. That's going to develop what's called plagiocephaly, a flattening in the back of the head that can even lead to helmet and other issues as well. So we're going to avoid that by having them off their back as much as possible. What about the Bumbos? What about the jumpers? What about the different seats and the devices you can put kids in? Take a deep breath, but I got bad news. We are not a fan. And when I say we, it's not just Dr. Andrew, it's not just Thrive, it's really every pediatric chiropractor, every pediatric OT, PT that you might speak with, because these are not putting our kids in positions to succeed. What they're doing is they're putting them in that position before they're able to developmentally on their own, right? You're putting them in one of those seats where it kind of just cocoons them in, it plops them in where they can't fall over, but they also can't sit up on their own. And so that is adding a load or adding a stress to their structural system before they're able to intrinsically, right? If we're putting them in positions before they're able to do it on their own, they're not ready for it, right? Same thing with standing up in one of those bouncers or those jumpers or those walkers. If a kid's not walking on their own, we don't want to put them in there, because then not only if you're in those, are you standing and bearing weight more than you're able to or more than you should at that point. Usually they're kind of springy, the kids' toes are just at the right distance where they can bounce, they can jump, they can launch themselves. So now we're not only just carrying our static load of our weight, it's a dynamic, more intense pressure that their system is going through. So I want you to avoid those as much as possible, or don't even let them in your house, okay? The other downside of those is if you are putting your kids in those, they're not moving. They're not having the free play that development should have. So don't get me wrong, it's not that you're immediately damaging and injuring your baby if you put him in a Bumbo seat. It's just not helpful. And there's not really a how little can I get away with standard that I would recommend you for. It's just never something that is going to be making their life better instead of worse. Now, I want to not ignore the obvious that is hard, right? Especially that 4 to 8 month window as a parent. Your kid wants to be more active. They want to be more involved. They're not just a newborn blob that's sleeping all the time, but they're not ready to, right? They're usually not crawling yet. They're not able to really do anything on their own. And so that's demanding on you, mom and dad, right? That means that if they're not able to use some of those devices to allow them to be involved because they're not helping, it might mean it's more on you, right? Might mean that you're holding them more. Might mean that you're attending to them and playing with them more. And I don't have a solution to that. That's just reality of parenting is not easy. What I would encourage you to do is look at stuff like baby wearing. That can be a massive help, right? I don't know anyone with multiple kids that has tried baby wearing and not said it's a lifesaver, right? Because you're doing a million things, you're trying to keep up with the rest of the family, and it allows you to do that while you still have that kid cared for and cocooned up against you. So they're happy, you've got your hands free, and it makes a big difference. So use baby wearing, but we want to avoid those things as much as possible because free play is really what kids need. So what if your kid's struggling? What if you're trying to do tummy time? You're trying to keep them off their back, but they hate it. They won't tolerate it. It's probably a sign that your kid needs some help. They probably should get scanned. We should see what is going on with their nervous system. I'm willing to bet if that's your situation, if we talk through your pregnancy and your birth experience, we do our neurological scans and assessment to evaluate how their body is functioning, we're probably gonna find something's not right. We're gonna find that there's some stresses that kid is dealing with that we can help with so that they're able to get back on track, so that development is able to catch up and they can hit all those milestones that they need to. Because this is not just a milestone or a temporary issue, right? It's not just they were a little late on crawling or they really didn't like tummy time. This is a massive part of their foundation. The motor system is what drives that higher neurodevelopment, right? And just in that first 12 months of life, almost every single area of your higher level cognitive function, the amount of synapses, the amount of connections and neurons formed in your brain peaks within that first 12 months or right around that first 12 months. So this is an important window and not one that I want you to just ignore and figure it out later and just hope they catch up, okay? So reach out. If you've had that pregnancy stress, if you've had that birth trauma, if you know another family or a kiddo that has dealt with that, tell them to find a pediatric chiropractor. Tell them to call us so that we can do that evaluation and see if there's something that is holding them back and so we can get them back on track. Hopefully this is helpful, parents. Please share it with the family. If you know another mom, if you know someone else with a kid that needs to hear this, or maybe you told someone else like, hey, your baby's so strong, they're holding their head up right away at birth, send them this video, say, hey, my bad, thought that was good. Turns out it's not so good. We want a soggy baby, not a tense baby. Hope this helps, guys, and we'll see you soon.